The dog didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just sat there, motionless, like time had paused around him, his amber eyes locked on the rusted steel doors of a weather-worn container. Deputy Logan Carter knew that look. It wasn't the gaze of a stray looking for scraps. It was the kind of stillness that held meaning, focus, training. It was just after dawn in the port of Tacoma. The cranes were already creaking into motion, forklifts weaving between rows of stacked metal, the air thick with the familiar blend of salt water, diesel, and cold. Logan had been running patrols along the South Yard for 5 years. He knew every corner of this place, knew what belonged, what didn't, and that dog didn't. Logan eased his cruiser to a stop, engine idling. The animal, a large German shepherd, maybe 5 or 6 years old, was broad-shouldered, his sable and black coat dulled by the morning frost. No collar, no tags, no visible limp or sign of distress, just stillness. Absolute stillness. "Hey, boy," Logan called out gently, cracking his door open. The dog didn't flinch, didn't so much as glance in his direction. He's not just sitting, Logan thought, he's waiting. The container itself wasn't remarkable, just another sea-worn box in a yard full of them, stamped with a faded shipping code, XPRT6719. Its corners were chipped, the paint sun-bleached and peeling. But something in the air was off, like the way the wind curved unnaturally around that row, or the way the usual gulls steered wide of the area. Logan stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel. He walked a few paces toward the dog, who finally acknowledged him with a flick of one ear, then returned his focus to the container door. "You lost?" Logan asked, voice low, more out of habit than expecting an answer. "Or are you on duty?" No response, just that frozen, alert stare. Logan moved around the container, eyeing the seams, the lock, the dirt beneath. Nothing unusual, no noises, no signs of tampering. And yet, something itched at the base of his skull. He crouched near the dog, careful not to make sudden moves. "You guarding this thing?" The shepherd didn't move, but there was something deliberate in the way his body shifted, barely perceptible. A slight brace in the hind legs, like he was ready for something. Not fearful, ready. Logan stood up slowly. He was a practical man. Protocol over hunch. But this didn't feel like a stray or coincidence. He radioed it in. "Unit 12 to dispatch. Got a loose shepherd, no ID. Near container XPRT6719 in South Yard. Might want animal control to swing by." "Copy that," the dispatcher replied. "Dog aggressive?" Logan glanced down. The shepherd sat like a statue. "Negative, just intense." "Roger, we'll log it." Logan clicked off the radio but didn't move right away. He stood there, hand on his utility belt, staring at the same door the dog refused to take his eyes off. His breath fogged in the morning chill. A forklift whined in the distance, but here, in this small stretch of the yard, it was unnervingly quiet. "All right, partner," Logan muttered. "You've got my attention." But just then his phone buzzed, a minor fender bender up near the east gate. 2 trucks. No injuries. Still, he was the closest unit. Logan hesitated. The shepherd turned his head slightly, meeting Logan's gaze with eyes that didn't beg or plead. They just held steady, like he understood something Logan didn't. "I'll be back," Logan promised, sliding behind the wheel. He pulled out slowly, checking the mirror once, then twice. The dog didn't move. By the time Logan returned an hour later, the yard had shifted again. The forklift paths had changed. A few new stacks had gone up, but the container, XPRT6719, was still there. And so was the dog. Same spot, same posture, same eyes. And this time, Logan didn't call it in. He parked a few rows down and walked back, stopping at a distance, watching, waiting. A worker from the cargo crew wandered by, tossing a curious glance at Logan. "That mutt been sitting there since last night," he said casually. "Wouldn't take food, wouldn't budge, spooked the guys a bit." Logan's gut tightened. "You hear anything? From inside?" The man shrugged. Didn't stick around to listen. Logan waited until he was alone again, then crouched low, listening. Nothing. But the dog. The dog was listening harder than anyone. And in that moment, Logan Carter made a quiet decision. This wasn't over. Not until he knew what that shepherd knew, because something was in that container, and whatever it was, the dog wasn't leaving it alone. By the third morning, Deputy Logan Carter wasn't pretending it was a coincidence anymore. He drove to the yard early, before the coffee kicked in, before the sun had warmed the frost off the steel. The dog was already there, same position, same posture, same unwavering stare at container XPRT 6719. He looked like he hadn't moved all night. Logan parked farther away this time, out of the line of sight from the main yard cameras. He told himself it was just curiosity, maybe boredom, but deep down he knew better. There was something about the dog. He wasn't wandering the port like the usual strays, nose to ground, tail wagging, begging food off the workers. This dog didn't pace. He didn't bark at forklifts or chase gulls. He didn't acknowledge anyone unless they got close. Even then, it was brief, controlled. Logan had worked with K9S during his time with the narcotics unit in Spokane. He'd spent months training beside Belgian Malinois and shepherds that could sniff out a hidden gram from across a parking lot. And this dog, whoever he'd been before, moved like them. Focused, intentional. But he wasn't wearing a vest. No badge, no handler in sight. Just a lone sentry at a forgotten corner of the port. That night, after a long shift patrolling, the East Lot. Logan returned. Off duty, out of uniform. He brought a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water, still cold from his fridge. He parked his truck at the edge of the south yard and walked the rest on foot. The wind had picked up, the kind that sliced through jackets and carried the sharp tang of the sound. The yard was quiet. Most workers had gone home. Logan spotted the dog immediately, still in front of the container, like part of the structure itself. He crouched a few feet away, the sandwich in hand. "You gotta eat sometime," he said. The shepherd didn't move. Logan unwrapped the sandwich, tore off a chunk of turkey, and set it on the ground between them. The dog waited. For a long moment, he didn't even sniff the air. Then slowly, he stepped forward, took the meat gently between his teeth, chewed once, swallowed, and returned to his position in front of the doors. No wag, no look back, just resumed his post. "Okay," Logan muttered, standing. "Not here for handouts. Got it." He glanced at the container again. Nothing unusual to the naked eye. Same dented corners, same chipped paint, but now it felt like it was watching him back. The next day, Logan started asking quiet questions. He stopped by dispatch, casually mentioned the stray, asked if anyone had reported a missing K9. Nothing. He checked with animal control. No recent calls about shepherds in the area. Then he looked into the container itself. XPRT 6719 was listed as containing miscellaneous electronic goods from a Miami port, scheduled for outbound transfer by the end of the month. No red flags, no holds, no inspections. But the manifest had been updated twice. First for a delayed customs clearance, then for a rescheduled pickup. Logan dug deeper. The origin company listed was real, but the contact info bounced back. The transfer number led nowhere. Something wasn't lining up. That evening he returned with a thermal scope borrowed unofficially from the precinct's storage locker. He parked his cruiser with the lights off and scanned the container from a distance. No heat signature. Nothing obvious. But the dog wasn't fooled. He paced a tight circle in front of the door, ears flicking to every minor sound. A gust of wind, a seagull's screech, the low clang of distant machinery. But his focus always snapped back to that door. At one point, Logan swore he saw the shepherd press his ear to the metal, just for a second, as if listening. Then he sat again. Whatever instinct was driving this animal, it wasn't fading. 3 days later, it rained hard. Tacoma-style rain, sideways and unforgiving. Logan drove by near midnight, convinced the storm would have driven the dog off. But he was still there, sitting in a pool of water, soaked to the bone, still watching. Logan pulled over, turned off the truck, and just sat. The dog didn't acknowledge him, just stayed on watch, like the container held something it shouldn't, something the rest of them had failed to see. For the first time, Logan felt something close to shame. He got out, grabbed the emergency blanket from his trunk, and walked over. "Hey," he said quietly, "you're gonna freeze out here." The dog didn't move, didn't even shiver. Logan crouched beside him, slowly laid the blanket across the shepherd's back. The dog didn't flinch. He just blinked once, slowly, then returned his gaze to the container. A forklift beeped in the distance. Somewhere a cargo door slammed shut, but right here, in this forgotten strip of gravel, the silence felt heavy. "I don't know what's in there," Logan said. "But you do, don't you?" The shepherd didn't answer, of course, but his eyes didn't lie. Something was wrong, and someone needed to listen. Logan stood and looked at the container again. Really looked. The lock was clean. Too clean. Newer than the metal it was bolted to. No corrosion. No scratches. Fresh. And something about the number, XPRT6719, nagged at him now. He didn't know why, just that it didn't belong. That night, back in his apartment, Logan stared at the ceiling and couldn't sleep. The image of the dog soaked in rain, unwavering in purpose, haunted him. He'd seen soldiers stand guard with less conviction. This wasn't just an abandoned animal. This was a working dog. A partner. Waiting for someone to believe him. And Logan Carter, for reasons he didn't fully understand yet, had decided he would. The rain came in cold sheets, driven sideways by a wind off the water that made the cranes groan and the yard lights flicker. It was the kind of night that made even seasoned dock workers punch out early. But Deputy Logan Carter stayed. He sat in an unmarked port vehicle tucked between stacks of empty pallets, engine off, windows just cracked enough to keep them from fogging. He held a thermal mug of coffee that had long since gone cold, eyes fixed on the same container, XPRT6719. And the dog. The shepherd was there, of course. Soaked, fur clinging to muscle, steam rising off his back in brief intervals when the wind let up. Logan had started calling him Ranger in his head. The name fit. Tonight, though, Ranger wasn't sitting. He was pacing. Not wildly, not restless. Deliberate. Alert. A 4-step perimeter in front of the container door. Turn. 4 steps back. Again. Logan narrowed his eyes. Something had shifted. A crack of thunder rolled across the port, low and distant. Rain hammered the windshield. Logan leaned forward, gripping the steering wheel. That's when he heard it. Faint. So faint he thought it might be the storm playing tricks. A knock, then silence, then another. Sharp. Measured. Logan was already out of the truck, the door swinging shut behind him. Water slapped his boots as he moved, hand on his flashlight, heart racing. He reached Ranger, who had frozen mid-step, ears pointed, body tense like a spring. "You heard that too, didn't you?" Logan murmured. The dog didn't look at him, just stared at the container, a low growl building in his throat. Not aggression, not fear. Warning. Logan stepped close to the steel door, pressed his palm flat against it. Cold, vibrating. He pressed his ear to the seam. Nothing. Then knock, knock. 3 seconds. Knock. Deliberate. Not cargo shifting. Not the wind. Someone, something was in there. He stepped back, adrenaline kicking hard. Ranger looked up at him, then back at the container. Logan raised his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12, South Yard, requesting inspection authorization for container XPRT 6719. Possible disturbance inside. There was a pause. Then static. Copy Unit 12. Do you have probable cause? Logan hesitated. Auditory anomaly. Confirmed by secondary presence. Negative, not sufficient. Log it. We'll flag it for morning. He lowered the radio slowly. They weren't going to check. Not based on noise, not based on a stray dog and a hunch. Logan stood in the rain for a long moment, fists clenched. Then he turned and crouched beside Ranger. "You're not crazy," he said. "I heard it too." The dog gave a low chuff. Not a bark. A response. The next morning, Logan walked into the security office with a cup of stale break-room coffee and a simple question. "Anyone know where that shepherd came from?" One of the port guards, Rodriguez, mid-50s, ex-military, shrugged. "Seen him a few weeks now. Shows up near shift change. Sits there. Weird thing is, doesn't follow food. Doesn't chase the gulls. Just stares at that one box." "Ever hear anything from it?" Rodriguez looked up sharply. "Like what?" "Knocking." Rodriguez frowned. "Wind bangs them sometimes. This one's sealed." Rodriguez didn't answer. Another guard piped in. "I heard him barking. Couple nights ago. Just one bark at a time, like he was warning someone. Or something." Logan's stomach turned. He filed that away. That night, he brought a parabolic mic, borrowed it off the books, mounted it to a portable recorder, parked even farther out, behind a stack of freight that hadn't moved in a month. He waited. Rain came again, softer this time. The wind had calmed. The yard was quiet. Ranger arrived just after midnight. He slipped in through the gap in the fencing with the ease of routine. Didn't look around, didn't hesitate, just went straight to the container, circled once, then sat. Logan switched on the mic. Waited. Minutes passed, then knock, knock. A pause, 2 more. He leaned in, adjusted the dial, held his breath. Faint breathing. Slow, labored. Then silence. It wasn't rats. It wasn't wind. He didn't sleep that night. He played the recording back on loop in his apartment. The knocks, the breathing, over and over. In the morning, he took it to his captain. "Sir, I think there's someone inside." The captain didn't even look up. Based on what? Repeated signals, unexplained sounds, same pattern every night. The dog. Logan's jaw clenched. He's not random. He's been on that container for almost 2 weeks. No food, no water, just watching. Until that container gives off a distress call, I'm not breaking federal chain of custody protocol on a dog's hunch. It's not just the dog, but he's all you've got. Logan left before he said something that would end his career. That evening, he didn't go home. He drove straight back to the South Yard, parked in the shadows, and waited. The knock came again. And this time, so did something else. Movement. A figure. A man in a reflective vest walked past the container. He paused, turned, approached the lock, reached into his pocket. Ranger stood immediately, body tense, head low. The man froze, then backed away. Logan snapped a photo through the windshield. Next shift, he showed it to security. No one recognized the man. No one remembered assigning anyone to that part of the yard. Now there were patterns. Now there were questions. And still, no one believed him. But Ranger stayed, and so did Logan. 2 watchers, 1 container, and something no one else wanted to hear, The container was gone. Deputy Logan Carter had driven into the South Yard just after sunrise, coffee in hand, mind already racing with what he'd heard the night before. But when he turned down row 9, where XPRT 6719 had stood for days like a rusted monument to unanswered questions, the space was empty. It hit him like a punch to the chest. He scanned the lot. Forklifts moved lazily through the lanes, workers still trickling in, heads down, routine. Nothing looked out of place, until he saw the dog. Ranger was 100 feet away, trotting fast behind a moving forklift carrying a familiar blue container. His bark cut through the cold morning air, sharp and urgent. He wasn't just following, he was protesting. Logan gunned the engine and turned hard, following the path around to the western edge of the port. That's where they dropped it. Far from the main lanes, tucked into a dead-end corner near the outer fence where the cameras rarely caught more than shadows and chain link. A blind spot. The forklift pulled away without ceremony, as if it were just another routine move. Ranger planted himself in front of the container before the gravel had settled, growling low and steady. Logan parked fast and got out, heart thudding. "What the hell is this?" No one answered. He pulled out his radio and called dispatch. "Unit 12, who authorized the relocation of container XPRT 6719? The reply came back after a pause. "Manifest adjustment. New pickup location logged last night. Paperwork's clean." Logan's stomach turned. "By who?" "Entered under badge ID 32 Alpha. That's Port Ops Supervisor, Mason." He knew Mason, a desk man. Never touched field work, never logged changes himself. Something was wrong. Ranger circled the container twice, then sat, panting hard, eyes never leaving the lock. Logan stepped up to the steel door. It was the same container, same ID, but the lock was different. Not newer, just different, out of place, improvised. He didn't like it. That afternoon, 2 men showed up. They wore high-vis vests and hard hats, but Logan had never seen them before. They didn't carry clipboards, didn't make conversation. They approached from the far fence line, cutting through rows of idle crates with practiced ease. Too clean to be lost, too casual to be first-timers. Logan watched from his cruiser, parked 2 rows over with a clear line of sight. Ranger stood the moment they came into view. His posture shifted, head high, ears forward, tail stiff. He moved between the men and the container, barking once, deep and loud. The men stopped, looked at each other. One of them stepped forward anyway. Ranger barked again, this time sharper. The man hesitated, then made a show of checking his phone. After a brief, awkward pause, they turned and walked off. Not far, just out of sight. Logan followed at a distance, circling behind the stacks. The 2 men weren't heading toward the operations office or security gate. They lingered behind a shipping trailer, talking low, too quiet to hear. One of them pulled something from his jacket. Logan couldn't see what, but the other checked his watch. Timing something. Planning something. Logan snapped a photo and sent it straight to his supervisor, Captain Ellis. Requesting authorization to inspect container XPRT 6719. High suspicion of tampering. Unfamiliar personnel. Possible breach of protocol. The reply came back 3 minutes later. Denied. Inspection requests must follow chain of command. No probable cause on record. Logan stared at the screen, disbelief turning to fury. Back at the container, Ranger was pacing again, agitated, low growls rising in his throat. He wasn't just anxious, he was warning them. Logan sat down on the gravel beside him, his back against the steel wall. "I asked," he said quietly. They said no. The dog stopped, looked at him, then returned to the door, planted himself again, as if to say, "Then we wait." That night, Logan returned in civilian clothes. No badge, no radio, just his truck and a camera. The lot was quiet. Sodium lights cast long shadows. The wind was dry and cold, rustling wrappers and chain link. Ranger was there, as always. Logan stayed in the shadows, camera raised, documenting everything. New lock, new location, new visitors. At 11:47 p.m., the same 2 men returned. This time, they didn't linger. One walked the perimeter. The other stepped straight up to the container and reached for the lock. Ranger exploded forward with a bark that echoed through the empty yard. The man recoiled fast, cursing, hand jerking back. Logan stepped from the shadows, flashlight in hand. "Evening, gentlemen." Both froze. The taller one raised his hands. "Didn't see. You there, officer?" "I bet. We were verifying cargo positioning. Per instruction." "Whose instruction?" No answer. Logan took a slow step forward. "Turn around. Hands on the crate." "You got no right. You're on restricted ground after hours." The shorter one cursed under his breath but complied. Logan patted them down. No weapons, no ID, just a laminated port pass clipped to a hoodie and a keyring that didn't match any standard lock. He let them go. No arrest. No backup. Not yet. He needed more. But in his gut, he knew what was coming. This container wasn't just misfiled. It wasn't just delayed. Someone was trying to move it under cover of night, and the only thing standing in their way was one man and a dog that refused to leave. The knock came just after 2 a.m. Logan had been sitting in his unmarked truck for hours, engine off, windows down, just enough to hear the pulse of the yard. Rain pattered softly on the roof. In the distance, a tugboat's horn broke the stillness. But here, tucked into the forgotten corner of the port, everything felt muffled, held in. Ranger sat alert a few yards ahead, facing the container, still as ever. Then it happened. Knock, pause, knock, knock. Not loud, not frantic, but unmistakably intentional. Logan leaned forward, his breath catching. Again, knock, knock, knock. It wasn't debris or metal shifting. It wasn't the wind. It was a pattern, a signal. Logan was out of the truck before he realized he'd moved. The gravel crunched under his boots as he approached the container. Ranger turned his head just enough to acknowledge him, then faced forward again, ears high. "You hear it too?" Logan whispered. The dog didn't respond. He didn't have to. Logan pressed his palm against the steel, cold, quiet, then knock, knock, 2 short, 1 long. It was Morse code. Someone was trying to talk. He pulled out his phone and hit record, capturing everything, the knocks, the rhythm, the silence in between. Then he took out his flashlight and swept it slowly along the length of the container. That's when Ranger moved. He stood up and walked with purpose. Not around the front, but along the right side, to a narrow space between the container and a rusted shipping trailer. Logan followed, ducking under a low-hanging tarp and squeezing into the tight gap. Ranger stopped near the back corner, his nose hovering just above the lock assembly. He sniffed, pulled back, then sniffed again. One paw raised. Logan crouched beside him, shining his light. The bolt didn't match. At first glance it looked the same as the others, dull silver, standard issue. But the more he looked, the more the details didn't add up. The numbering was wrong. The serial stamped on the shackle wasn't aligned. The seal didn't bear the port's emblem. It was newer, cleaner, like it had been swapped recently. He snapped a picture, then one of the corner seam where the paint had been disturbed. Small tool marks near the edge, like someone had tried to wedge it open. Ranger let out a low whine and scratched at the corner. "Hold up," Logan muttered. He panned the light along the base of the container, spotting something else. A faint dent in the gravel. Fresh, compact, footprint-sized. Someone had been here. He stepped back and looked up at the perimeter camera. The angle was off. The container was positioned just outside its arc. A blind spot. Logan exhaled slowly, steadying his heart. Then he turned to Ranger. You've been trying to show me this the whole time, haven't you? Ranger sat, breathing steady, his body relaxed, but his eyes locked on the door. Later that morning, Logan compiled everything. Photos, audio, timeline. He brought it to Captain Ellis again. There's something in there. Someone. The captain didn't dismiss him outright this time. He scrolled through the photos, listened to the knocking. "This is thin," he said finally. "Circumstantial at best. Could be staged, could be a prank, and even if it's not, if there's someone in there, you break that seal without a federal order, you're done." Logan leaned forward. "Then get the order. You have no direct threat, no confirmed ID, no visible victim. We have a trained dog who hasn't left that container in 2 weeks. We have tampering, a false lock, unauthorized personnel scoping it out at night." Ellis didn't respond, just rubbed his temples. "We're losing time," Logan said. "This isn't storage, it's concealment. I'll submit the request." Ellis said reluctantly, "But don't hold your breath." Logan left the office seething. He had done everything by the book, and the book was failing. That night, he returned to the yard with a plan. If they wouldn't act, he would keep watching. Every night, every shift, until something broke. He brought a pair of infrared binoculars and set up a watch post in the dark. Ranger lay at his feet, quiet, occasionally lifting his head when a gust of wind passed or a forklift groaned in the distance. Around midnight, Logan caught movement near the container, a silhouette ducking low between the crates. He raised the binoculars. Male, mid-30s, wearing a vest with no logo, clipboard in hand but no visible ID badge. He walked with confidence, like someone who wasn't expecting to be seen. He circled the container once, paused near the lock, then walked away. Logan snapped photos again. Time-stamped, high-res. But what clenched it wasn't the man. It was the sound that came 5 minutes after he left. Knock, pause, knock, knock, pause, knock. It was the same rhythm, the same message. Help. Ranger stood, muscles taut, ears fixed forward. Logan didn't move, he just whispered, "I hear you." And in that moment, he knew. This wasn't about evidence anymore, it was about time, and who would act before it ran out. The knock had changed. It was louder. Now, urgent. Like someone had finally given up whispering for help and started shouting with their fists. Logan Carter stood in front of Container XPRT 6719, jaw clenched, the cold biting through his uniform. Ranger was at his side, unmoving. The dog's ears were locked forward, tail stiff. Every muscle in his body was a drawn bow. He was ready. More than ready. And Logan had had enough. That morning, he walked straight into Captain Ellis's office, a folder in one hand, determination in the other. "I want that container opened," he said. Ellis didn't even glance up from his screen. "Request's already been denied, twice." "This isn't a request anymore," Logan said. He dropped the folder on the desk. Photos, audio, recordings of the knocks, photos of the tampered lock, infrared shots of unknown personnel hovering in the shadows, the false manifest trail. "And this?" Logan added, pointing to a printout of the lock's serial number compared to port-issued ones. "Doesn't match. Not even close." Ellis finally looked up. "That dog still camped out?" "Hasn't moved," Logan said. 2 weeks, rain, wind, you name it. He's not going anywhere until we find out what's inside." The captain leaned back, arms crossed. "You're hanging an entire accusation on a stray." Logan didn't flinch. "Number I'm hanging it on a working dog. One who's seen more than most of us and still stands guard when no one else does." Ellis let out a long breath. "Even if I wanted to greenlight this, you know what it would mean. No warrant. No probable cause the lawyers will recognize. If you're wrong, I'm not. If you are, it's your badge." Logan nodded. Then take it. A long silence. Finally, Ellis said, "You really think this dog is acting on something more than instinct?" "I think he's the only one listening to what no one else can hear." Ellis picked up the folder again, studied the photo of the dog sitting alone in the fog, staring at the steel door like it might open any second. "You want to open that box," he said. "You do it under one condition." Logan waited. "You list that animal, Ranger or whatever you've decided to call him, as an unofficial investigative asset. That way, if this goes south, it's on record as an internal canine response. And if it blows up, you don't just lose your job." Logan nodded. "I understand." "Number you don't. If this turns out to be a waste of time, you walk. And the dog, he doesn't come back on port property. Ever." The words cut deeper than Logan expected, but he said, "Then we'd better be right." 2 hours later, Logan was back in the yard, bolt cutters in hand. A port security unit watched from a distance, unsure whether to intervene or stand down. Ellis had sent an email up the chain, vague and buried in procedural language. The storm had cleared, but the sky remained heavy. Low clouds pressed against the cranes-like weight they couldn't shrug off. Ranger stood by the door, body taut, eyes tracking Logan's every move. "This is it, partner," Logan said, voice low. He bent over the lock. It was newer than any on the row, clean, oiled, with no weathering. That alone had never sat right with him. With one solid squeeze, the bolt cutters snapped the shackle. The lock hit the ground with a dull metallic thud. The sound echoed. Ranger took one step forward, nose to the seam. Logan gripped the door handle, pulled. It didn't move. He pulled harder. Metal groaned but held. Behind him, one of the security guys stepped up. "Might need 2 sets of hands." Logan nodded. Together they yanked. Rust cracked. Hinges screamed. Then, with a final lurch, the door gave way, opening just enough to release a breath of stale, metallic air. Ranger surged forward, nose working furiously. He stopped just past the threshold, ears high, body stiff. Inside the container was dark. Crates lined the walls, cheap wood, unmarked. No visible contraband, no bodies, nothing obvious. Ellis's voice rang in Logan's head. "If you're wrong..." But then, a sound, faint, scraping. Logan froze. Then, knock, knock. From deep within the stack. He raised his flashlight and stepped inside. Ranger moved with him, nose close to the floor, tail low but steady. The air was thick with something, sweat, old rust, the residue of fear. "Where is it?" Logan murmured. Ranger darted left, then backtracked. He stopped near the far wall, pawing gently at a narrow space between 2 crates. Logan aimed his light there, and saw it. A panel, plywood, nailed hastily. Behind it, something moved. He knocked once on the panel. 2 knocks came back. He turned, heart thudding. "We're not wrong," he said, and Ranger finally wagged his tail. Once, quiet, certain. The inside of the container didn't make sense at first. Logan's flashlight swept across rows of wooden crates, stacked tightly, floor to ceiling, forming narrow aisles like a makeshift labyrinth. No labels, no shipping stamps, nothing to indicate what they held or why they were here. The air was dense, stale with the sour tang of sweat and something deeper, neglect, maybe fear. Ranger moved ahead cautiously, nose low, body fluid and alert. His paws made no sound on the cold steel floor. "Easy," Logan whispered, voice barely audible. At the far end of the container, behind a wall of crates, they found it. A sheet of plywood, nailed unevenly. Behind it, faint breathing. Logan reached out, tapped twice. 2 knocks answered, soft but immediate. "Jesus," muttered one of the port security guards behind him. "There's someone in there." Logan didn't hesitate. He grabbed a crowbar from the equipment bag and wedged it beneath the panel. The plywood groaned. Ranger stood directly beside him now, tail stiff, ears forward, muscles tight. One pull, two. The nails gave, and the plywood fell backward with a crack. Behind it was a second door, metal, narrow, bolted shut from the outside. Logan's heart pounded. "Hold the light," he said. He unlatched the bolt. It screeched in protest, stiff from rust and time. Then he pulled the door open. At first there was only darkness, then a flicker of movement. A face, a child, small, thin, no older than 8. Hollow cheeks, eyes wide and frozen in fear. The kind of fear that goes beyond instinct, that has been taught, enforced, repeated. She didn't move. She just stared at Ranger. The shepherd took a single step forward, then stopped, letting out the gentlest whine Logan had ever heard. Not a bark, not a growl. A quiet invitation. The girl blinked once. Then slowly, as if moving underwater, she stepped forward and laid one hand on the dog's muzzle. Her fingers trembled. Her legs looked too weak to hold her weight. Ranger didn't move. He just stood there, calm and present, his body a steadying anchor. Logan swallowed hard. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now." Behind the girl, another shape moved, then another. Logan raised the flashlight. Children, 6, no 7, no 8. They came out one by one, some crawling, some limping, some too stunned to make sound. Their clothes were worn and mismatched. Some had no shoes. A few clutched each other's hands like they were afraid the light would vanish and the nightmare would close in again. Ranger moved through them gently, stopping to sniff each one, tail wagging, just enough to offer comfort. The children responded in the smallest ways, fingers brushing fur, eyes following his movement, bodies leaning toward his warmth. Logan radioed in. Voice flat, controlled. "This is Carter. We have confirmed victims. Repeat, confirmed victims. At least 15. Request immediate EMS and law enforcement backup to South Yard Container X, PRT 6719. A pause. Then dispatcher's voice cracked through the static. "Copy that. Units en route." One of the boys, maybe 10 years old, looked up at Logan and spoke for the first time. "Are we really out?" Logan crouched, nodding. "You are." The boy looked at Ranger. "He came first. He didn't leave." "No," Logan said, voice low. "He didn't." Outside, flashing lights began to cut through the fog. The echo of sirens drifted in from the main road. The security guards stepped back as paramedics and officers rushed in. Logan remained with the kids, guiding them gently from the shadows to the threshold. Some couldn't walk. 2 had to be carried. One girl refused to let go of Ranger's neck. The dog didn't resist. He simply sat beside her and waited until she felt steady enough to move. When the last child was out, Logan stepped into the hidden space again. It was barely larger than a walk-in closet. Concrete floor. No bedding, no water. Just crates along the back wall, empty except for scattered wrappers and a single plastic bucket. He turned back. Ranger still stood at them. Entrance. Eyes fixed on the darkness. "You knew," Logan whispered. "From day one." The shepherd finally looked at him, and in that silent moment, Logan understood something that no amount of training had ever taught him. Sometimes it's not the badge that finds the truth, it's loyalty. Relentless, stubborn, unwavering loyalty. The kind that refuses to walk away. The paramedics had just begun triage when Logan's instincts screamed. He stood near the container, radio pressed to his shoulder, watching one child, barely 5, curl up beneath a thermal blanket. Ranger curled protectively beside her. The air was thick with motion, EMTs moving quickly but carefully, officers taping off the scene, floodlights illuminating the once-forgotten strip of the yard. Then came the movement. Fast, low, slicing between the stacks. Two men, dressed like dock workers. High-vis vests, heavy boots. But they weren't moving like they belonged. They weren't coming to help. They were coming to clean up. Logan's eyes locked on them instantly. One carried a heavy duffel. The other had his hand tucked too carefully under his vest. They were heading straight for the container. "Stop!" Logan's voice cracked like a rifle shot. The men froze, then bolted. The taller one ducked left, vanishing between a line of cargo crates. The other pivoted hard and took off toward the east fence line. Ranger was already in motion. Before Logan could shout, the shepherd launched forward like he'd been waiting for the signal all along. No hesitation. No command needed. Just pure instinct honed by weeks of silent vigilance. Logan chased the second man, boots slamming against gravel, lungs burning. The suspect cut between two shipping trailers, trying to loop toward the back fence. Logan closed the distance fast. The man made a sharp right, wrong move. Logan dropped his shoulder and tackled him mid-turn, slamming them both into a pile of loose pallet wood. The man fought hard, elbowing wildly, but Logan had him pinned before he could reach whatever was under his vest. "I've got one!" Logan shouted into the radio. "Ranger!" A cry cut through the yard. Sharp, human. Then a second sound. Lower, deeper, Ranger's bark. Not frantic, not aggressive, commanding. By the time Logan cuffed his suspect and marched him back toward the container, port security was already swarming the area. He rounded the corner and saw Ranger standing over the other man, the one with the duffel, who was now flat on the ground, face pale, one hand raised in surrender. The shepherd stood with his front paws inches from the man's chest, his body taut, teeth bared just enough to discourage a second try. One officer approached with cuffs, eyes wide. "That dog yours?" Logan nodded, chest heaving. "Tonight he is." The man Ranger had stopped was shaking now. His duffel lay open on the gravel, its contents spilling out under the floodlights. Bolt cutters, lock grinders, burner phone, a portable GPS unit, and a folded document. Logan crouched beside it, unfolding the page with steady fingers. It was a map of the port, marked with red X's, 6 of them, each one beside a container ID. One of them was XPRT 6719. He looked up, heart pounding. They weren't just cleaning up, he said. They were prepping more. The suspect on the ground muttered something. Logan knelt beside him. What was the plan? No answer. Logan didn't press. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than any confession. The 2 men were loaded into separate patrol cars. As they were driven off, Logan turned to Ranger. The dog sat in front of the container again. Not panting, not restless, just watching, steady, still. "I think we just kicked the hornet's nest," Logan said. Ranger didn't move. He didn't have to. He had done what no surveillance camera, no motion detector, no patrol rotation had been able to do. He had waited. And when the moment came, he ran toward it. Because that's what partners do. By dawn, the port was no longer just a dockyard. It was a crime scene. FBI agents arrived in unmarked SUVs, their badges glinting under the pale winter light. Crime scene techs photographed every inch of container XPRT 6719, logging the tampered lock, the hidden plywood door, the narrow crawl space that led to 15 stolen lives. By mid-morning, the media had picked up the scent. News vans lined the perimeter fence, their antennas rising like metallic trees, reporters crowding near the gates with wide eyes and urgent voices. The story had everything they wanted: mystery, children, danger, and one silent, stubborn hero. Logan Carter stood at the edge of the cordoned zone, hands on his hips, eyes sharp. He'd given his statement. So had half the department. But every few minutes, another microphone found its way toward his face. "Deputy Carter, who tipped you off?" Is it true a dog located the container? Do you have a name for him? Logan said the same thing every time. The investigation's ongoing. The children are safe. That's what matters. But in his pocket, he kept a folded slip of notebook paper. It had been handed to one of the port officers by a social worker who'd received it from a child. No name, just blocky handwriting. Tell Ranger, I'm not afraid anymore. He'd read it 5 times that morning. Each time, it hit deeper. Behind him, the kids were being loaded into ambulances and SUVs, wrapped in blankets, escorted by quiet, wide-eyed caseworkers. Some of the children clung to one another. Others walked on their own, wary but brave. None of them cried. They had done their crying already. In the dark, in silence, waiting for someone to notice. Ranger stood near the edge of the scene, not restrained, not commanded, just present. As always, he watched the children go with the same intensity he had watched the container, as if he were keeping a final tally. One of the younger girls broke away from a social worker and jogged back to him. She didn't say a word, just hugged his neck, then turned and ran to rejoin her group. Logan watched, throat tight. An agent in a dark suit approached. Mid-40s, composed, clipped tone. We're compiling full reports. We'll need the dog for further documentation. Logan turned, jaw tightening. He's not government property. He's not registered. You won't find a record. The agent raised an eyebrow. Then we'll need to verify chain of custody. He may be part of the evidence trail. He's not evidence, Logan said flatly. He's the reason any of this got found in the first place. The agent didn't blink. We need to know where he came from. So do I. The man gave a tight smile. That's not how this works, Deputy. It's exactly how this worked. A beat passed. Then the agent relented. Name? Logan looked past him to the shepherd. The dog stood steady, not tense, not afraid, just watching. Always watching. Ranger, Logan said. The agent jotted it down. That a call sign or nickname? Does it matter? Logan didn't wait for a reply. He stepped past the agent and walked towards the dog, who met him halfway. He ran a hand along the shepherd's back and felt the tension ease beneath his palm. I guess you've got a name now, he said quietly. Ranger didn't react, but his tail swept once through the gravel. Back at the precinct, Logan kept things quiet. There were no press briefings, no interviews. He stayed off camera, let the federal agencies handle the noise. Ranger stayed close, either curled up under Logan's desk or walking at his side like they'd been partners for years. One afternoon, a letter came to the front desk. No return address. The envelope had been decorated with marker swirls and stickers. Inside, on ruled notebook paper, were 6 words written in careful print. Tell Ranger I'm not afraid anymore. It was the same message. Different child. The social worker later confirmed. Several of the rescued kids had started asking about the dog. Where he was. If he'd remember them. If he was safe. Logan pinned the letter above his desk. Right next to the photo someone had snapped. Ranger lying in the container doorway. One of the little girls curled up asleep against his side. Outside the station, reporters still waited, but Logan didn't give them anything more than they needed. The world could talk about victims, villains, and rescue operations. He knew the story they'd never fully tell. The one about a dog who refused to walk away. Who waited. Who watched. Who stayed. No badge, no orders, just purpose. And Logan Carter, once reluctant, now certain, was going to make sure that story stayed protected. Even if Ranger's past never surfaced, his future would be clear. Because there are some questions that don't need names to be answered. There are truths that live in silence, loyalty, and the steady breath of a dog who never gave up. A year passed. Quietly. Not without pain, but with healing. The port no longer smelled of rust and diesel. That section, the one where Container X PRT 6719 once stood, had been cleared, paved, and transformed into something else entirely. On that narrow plot of land, between the chain-link fencing and the shallow marsh, stood a new memorial. Ranger's Rest. It wasn't grand. There were no statues, no towering monuments. Just a small park with a clean walking path, a single young tree, and a curved wooden bench facing the water. Simple. Honest, like the one it honored. The ceremony was small, just as Logan had requested. No news crews, no podiums crowded with officials trying to be seen. Just the survivors, the first responders, a few locals, and the kids. Those who had found new homes, some with foster families, others reunited with relatives. They came wearing small pins with Ranger's paw print engraved in brass. Logan stood at the front, clean-shaven for once, dress blues neat, posture strong. He wasn't a man who liked speeches. He hated microphones. But when the crowd quieted and all eyes turned to him, he stepped forward. He didn't clear his throat. Didn't unfold a note. He just looked at the young tree beside him, its trunk barely the width of his wrist, and then down at the shepherd lying calmly at his side. "I didn't find them," Logan said. "He did, I just followed." That was it. No applause, no dramatic music. Just silence, the kind that meant something. And then the plaque was revealed. Beneath the tree, bolted into a smooth granite stone, were the words, "To the one who stood guard when no one else would." The kids clapped then. Some cried. One by one they walked up to Ranger, knelt, whispered things only he could understand. He took it all in, calm, patient, the faint wag of his tail the only reply. After the ceremony, Logan took the long way home. Just him and Ranger in the truck, windows down, wind in their hair. No sirens, no deadlines, just the open road and the quiet knowing between them. Back on the porch, as the sun dipped low, Logan brought out 2 bowls, one for himself, filled with chili, the other with Ranger's favorite, venison and sweet potato. They ate in peace. No words, no noise beyond the crickets and the occasional creak of the rocking chair. Logan reached down and scratched behind Ranger's ear. "I still don't know where you came from," he said softly, "but I know exactly why you stayed." Ranger looked up, eyes reflecting the amber sky, and leaned into the touch, not out of habit, but understanding. Because this wasn't just a rescue story. It was a story about presence, about choosing to stay when no one else even knew to look, a story about a shepherd who waited in silence, stood guard in darkness, and led the way when all others faltered. And now, where there was once fear and cold steel, there was a park, a tree, a plaque, a promise kept. To those reading this, or watching from across the screen, let this story linger. Not every hero has a badge, not every savior speaks, but some wear fur and walk on 4 legs, with hearts that never stop listening. If this story moved you even a little, support those who can't speak for themselves, rescue, foster, protect, and most of all, never underestimate the power of one silent guard dog who refused to give up. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories and tributes to the heroes who walk beside us on 4 paws. This one's for Ranger, and all those like him.